I'm Geri Fox. My current title is Psychiatry Department Chair on our Rockford campus of University of Illinois at Chicago College of Medicine. I am a U of I lifer, having gone to medical school on our Chicago campus. I did do my residency in psychiatry at Northwestern and then came back for my child psychiatry fellowship. While I was in my fellowship, I was the chief fellow, and our program was falling apart and was about to be closed by the RRC. And we got a new department head who pretty much fired everybody around me, but me and my mentor, and asked me 1 year out of my training if I would take over my own training director for my own residency program. So I became the fellowship training director of what was kind of a mess at the time, and I have no idea why he decided to have faith in me to do that. But I then landed in academia with a big jump at that moment. I got the program back on full accreditation with commendation. I stayed the training director for 9 years. I also, during that time, started working part-time when I had my first baby, about pretty much right around the same time I became the training director. And I worked 60% time for 16 years until my youngest was 11. Um, as part of that, I was teaching child development and got this idea that videotaping my kids would be a great idea for teaching development so that you could watch kids grow up in your classes. And I had no idea this was going to turn into a worldwide project where my kids are being used to teach child development in most of the medical schools in the country and in a variety of fields. That's a whole nother topic if you want to go into that one. So in terms of philosophy, work-family balance was always important to me. Child development was important to me. Seeing kids in the context of their families and their communities was important to me, and I shared that with everybody in the video series. This is before there was such a thing as YouTube. But this is a bunch of short videos used for illustrating teaching points. I also, while I was still part-time, became the assistant dean for graduate medical education and reviewed all of our 55 or so programs for about 18 years. So I really got to know all the different specialties in graduate medical education. This was not just psychiatry. This makes me very helpful to medical students when they're trying to pick their field, because I do know what the different fields are like in a different way than most people in psychiatry. Um, I also picked up a master's in health professions education in our Department of Medical Education. So I basically got a degree in education um, while I was already having been in education for a while. Let's see what else. I then started working full-time and became the director of medical student education in psychiatry. So I was switching from GME to UGME at that point, although I was still the dean for GME as well. So I had one foot in both worlds. And that was all on the Chicago campus. And I then became the associate dean for wellness, which was a position they created for me. That was across all of our campuses. And I developed a curriculum in wellness, uh, which still fits pretty well with all the other stuff I was doing. And did that for 7 years. And then I was asked to become the department chair on our Rockford campus, which had never been something on my list, but it is actually still primarily being the director of medical student education and psychiatry, which I do very much enjoy and have done all along. Nationally, I became the liaison for ACAP between uh, the ADAMSEP, which is the Medical Student Educators Group nationally, and child psychiatry, ACAP, because we have had such a shortage in this field for so long. And it's always been a passion of mine to try to get more people into it. And I had this really not too deep thought, which is how are medical students supposed to pick the field if they've never seen it? And it turned out that most medical schools did not have child psychiatry in their curriculum. So I started a task force, which was based in the medical student educators group, to try to get child psychiatry into medical student education. I did that working with my buddies for many, many years at AdPERT, with the training directors group, which I'd been in since 1990, and I still go, and the medical student educators group, and an ACAP, and also AAP. And so we put together a big plan and got all kinds of curricular stuff going. And now I think there is child psychiatry for most M3s, at least see a little bit of it. So that's been a big passion of mine as well. So I'm sure I'm leaving something out, but that's basically what I've done, other than talking to you about my clinical practice philosophy and things like that. I really think that I love working with trainees at all different levels. I keep in touch with my alumni. It's a real joy to be able to do that and to watch and to help people figure out what field they want to be in, even if it's not psychiatry. That's kind of fun. On my medical school application, I wrote that I wanted to be a child psychiatrist. And I'd never met one, and I didn't know what they did. So that's a little weird. And I had an atypical path in terms of I majored in psychology and art. I did a lot of I got a degree in art therapy. I trained in art therapy at the Art Institute. Um, After I finished my college, I did no pre-med in college whatsoever, because my mom really wanted me to be a dental hygienist like her, and I really didn't want to be. And I thought the best thing was to skip all the science. So I started working part-time at University of Chicago hospitals while I was working on my undergraduate thesis, and I was like, "There's the world of medicine," and I was blown away. I had no idea. And I went back and started taking pre-med courses after college. And in the meantime, I'd been doing part-time teaching, and then I had the art therapy and the art background, and I was doing graduate English of all things. And I thought, you know what? Why not go into medicine? And I applied and I got in, shockingly. And I really had no science background, which put me at a terrible disadvantage compared to all of the gunner M1s in my class. And so to this day, I'm very sympathetic to people coming from different paths. I have found over the years that my love of art and my love of writing and my love of photography and I became a movie maker, so I've really been able to use all the stuff that I was using. But I just think probably out of the psychology background, it just seemed like of all of medicine that would be a good fit. And I've been working with kids as a, little preschool teacher there for a while. And so I actually did do it, which is amazing because I really didn't know what I was talking about when I applied. I'm currently working on a campus where we have a very large rural medicine program. We get medical students from all over the state in little tiny towns, and a lot of them go into family medicine. And my practice philosophy is pretty much to be a family medicine doc, but just psychiatry. So I'm seeing people, we love to say things like womb to tomb, but I'm seeing babies all the way through old age in the context of their families. And I can't tell you how many of my patients I see their brothers and their sisters and their parents and their kids and their grandkids sometimes. And I've seen some of the same patients from age 3 all the way through age 30 now. And I see their kids and I see their parents, and I do family sessions with um I just did a family session last week with a patient of mine who's in his 40s with concerns about one of his parents is deteriorating. And we pulled in all the siblings from all over the country into a Zoom meeting. And I have seen his parents in person 15 years ago. And sometimes I start seeing those parents. So I do my geriatric stuff along with my little kid stuff. I go to schools. And so I'm really part of their lives over time. And so, given that my academic teaching has mainly been in the world of child and adolescent development and lifespan development, it fits perfectly. And then teaching about wellness has come in pretty darn handy working with my students. And I developed a curriculum that was based on thinking about what's most important for the physicians themselves to know and what's the news they can use that's evidence-based for helping their patients as well. And I want them to be happy and I want them to see their kids and not just be, working 80 hours a week and never being home. And so all of this stuff about being healthy and not burning out, um, it goes with my working with medical students and residents and fellows too, and faculty. I do a lot of faculty development. So watching people develop and helping them be happy and being a part of their lives, um, you know, it's a joy to work with a patient who I've seen for 10 years, an adult through multiple girlfriends, all failed, and then get to go to the engagement party and go bowling with his mom. I mean, it's so much fun. I'm having a blast. I'm never bored. From a diversity perspective, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and I've been on the Chicago campus for, 30 years. And then I end up in a small town for one of our rural campuses. It's not completely rural, but it's a small town. And it's an entirely different demographic. And I have been able, just naturally based on my experience over these years, to be able to be a support for our minority students on our campus who um, it's not that they're not trying, but when they're out in the community on rotations, they are seen as other very often, and people really don't know what to do. And so people like to come to me and vent because they know that I get it. So that's been an opportunity to serve in a way that I wasn't expecting. I try very much, and I've written many articles about work-family balance. My dissertation for my master's in health professions education was on work family balance and academic advancement. And I was looking at the obstacles, not just for women, but for anybody that wants to be able to raise kids and still go into academics. And so I did a study of part-time faculty at our place and also nationally, and talked about tenure versus non-tenure. And I was a major advocate for trying to get a prorated tenure track so that you can choose. You can do it all, but you can't do it all at once. And your kids are only little once. And so that's a big part of my identity is to be able to support that. And I was lucky as heck to be able to work 60% time while my kids were little for 16 years with a department head who promoted me and supported me, and to be able to make the movies of my kids growing up, and also a movie of my dad dying at age 97 for the lifespan part of this. I have been able to balance my life in a way that many of my colleagues have not been able to. So that's a big part of my identity too, is being able to advocate to support that. And that's part of wellness as far as I'm concerned. I want to emphasize the importance of good leadership. How's that? And when you have somebody who is a wonderful leader, who has a wonderful vision and like mind, and cares about human resources and supporting the people that they're in the department, you can do anything. It's a joy to be able to collaborate. And there have been times when it has not been like that, and then people who have, different vision, different values, and those are challenges. And to be able to hang in is a skill set in itself. I'd say that I began with the best in that um, our new department head coming in from Yale into a department that was in terrible shape, came in, changed everything, and for whatever reason adopted me while I was just graduating. And I couldn't have been luckier. And I learned from him. He really actively mentored me and taught me what it is to be a great leader and how to grow your department, how to make difficult decisions and do it with kindness. I learned so much from that man. And my main mentor, besides him, I was lucky enough as an M1 to walk into this classroom, which I now teach in with 300 students, and listen to Jay Hirsch give a lecture on child psychiatry and working with families and systems. And I fell in love. And I went down at the end of that lecture and I said, "Would you be my mentor?" And he said, "Of course, honey." And from that moment on until the day he died, he taught me everything. He invited me to work with him in his private practice, which I did. So it wasn't just in medical school or in fellowship. It was out into practice, and then he became our director of Institute for Juvenile Research while I was the training director. I couldn't have been happier, and I soaked up everything he had to teach. And I have named, we have a Klingenstein now, named after him in his honor. He had 4 kids, 2 of whom became child psychiatrists. Who, I'm very I'm able to represent what he would do and what he would say and what he would think because he's part of me. And I'm very lucky that way. I've been very close to his family. So those are my 2. I've had others, but those 2, I think, had a huge effect on me. And I just lucked out. And it's fun to be able to teach the same subject matter that he taught in the same classroom. Sounds sort of politically radical, but we as child psychiatrists are in demand and we can do whatever we want. And we should not let ourselves be bossed around in systems that are not healthy systems, that are demanding that we do things that are soul killing. And I think we forget the power that we have. And I know I sound very radical here, but I think that you don't have to do things that are soul killing. You should do things that bring joy. You don't have to do 15-minute med checks unless you frigging want to, and maybe you do. I don't happen to love inpatient. I'm glad I have colleagues that do like it, but so I don't do inpatient. I know what kind of cases I like and patients I like and situations I like, and I put myself in those situations. So if there's a toxic system, I try to not allow myself to be bossed around in it, which doesn't make me the easiest person probably sometimes, but so standing up for what you care about and your values. Beyond that, it's important to make time for exercise, for sleep, for eating well, however you define that. And there's a whole evidence-based piece to that, but we're not going to talk about that now. And making sure that you're doing what you love, and that if you're standing up for something and fighting a difficult situation, that you're doing it because it's something you're passionate about and you're helping somebody. And I think all of that goes to wellness. my mentor, Jay Hurst, used to say, don't stay in a job for more than 4 years. I have not done that. I've stayed in things forever. It's like 18 years straight. But I've changed different roles multiple times at the same institution. For me to have, there aren't too many people, I don't think, that have had significant roles in undergraduate, graduate, psychiatry, other fields, two different dean positions. Um, so longevity, and then have had national roles where I've been able to make a difference. One of the earliest ones, if you can imagine such a thing, is that when I started out, there was no child psychiatry match. And I helped put it in. And that, that was the Wild West. It was a nightmare. So that I'm very proud of. And that was really early on. That was just a few years after I'd finished training. But when I see a cause that needs work that I can contribute to, that gives me a lot of energy in terms of longevity. If I'm just maintaining things, that gets a little boring. I like fixing things. I've always liked fixing things. And so one of the great things about being a reviewer for graduate medical education is I could walk into, say, our medicine residency program, which is huge, and walk out after an hour and know everything that's wrong that needed to be fixed. And the program director, who's a great guy, would say to me, how did you find all that out? I'm in charge of this thing. I didn't know all those things. Because if my intention is benign and people understand that I'm there to help, we are there to fix this thing, people talk to me. And then I follow up because I like fixing things. So that's I guess, in a bizarre way, my secret to longevity is I like to fix things. I started out very early on what was then, what did we call it then? I guess the recruitment committee for ACAP. This has been, and then and the mission back then, with some people who are senior leaders now, we were all trying to figure out how are we going to make recruitment better, and we put together a major package of, and tried to get people to be. And then I had the idea about, hey, why aren't we talking to the medical students, because all the focus of ACAP was on getting residents to do the fellowship. And then there were a whole bunch of people doing workforce. And when I was asked, so having done my whole career up to a certain point in GME with ACAP, and I'm going to the AdPert meeting this March. I've missed going to almost every single one since 1990. So that mission of fellowship training and residency training, and working with groups of people to try to get that mission going, took me up to the point that I got the job of working in medical student education. And then it was like a whole nother world. And since I already knew all the people in fellowship and residency, but really didn't know the medical student educators, and I was like a newbie in that world, I was full of ideas about putting everybody together. And so that gave me this wonderful opportunity as the liaison to build, basically putting all my friends together and getting them to work on really cool projects. And that was so exciting and so much fun. And I think that made a lot of difference. And, that's, I could go on with that, but that's probably a good enough answer for what you're asking. Think about what really brings you joy and gives you, and who you admire, and go take that person to lunch. um, when I have jumped from one area to another, for example, when I became the dean for graduate medical education, I happened to have been feeling like, well, I've been doing the training director for 9 years, and what else is out there? So I made an appointment with the senior associate dean to get some advice, career advice. And I happened to walk in on a day when he found out that he had just managed to put the institution on probation due to a bunch of stuff he hadn't done. And it was a tag, you're it. I was sitting there and he had opened an envelope with bad news, and he decided I could do this job. So he created a position for me. This may not be the answer you were expecting, but I think that when I became the department chair right now, I had known the job was open and had never applied for it. The regional dean, who I'd known for a while, asked me to do it, and talked. It's kind of just being in the right place at the right time. There's a certain amount of serendipity. There's a lot of networking. And so thinking about what you think would be fun and going and find people who you would like to play with in that sandbox. Not just child psychiatry, but most fields have been adversely affected by managed care, in my opinion. And again, I think I'd like people to wake up and realize they can do whatever they want still. When I for the last, oh boy, for the last 7 years, I pulled my patients out of U of I, and I've been doing my private practice again, like I did way back at the beginning. And it's a conscious decision if you want to take insurance or not. I do, because I wish somebody would take mine, but I only take certain types. But I mean, you can make you have the freedom to make those decisions. So I think that if you allow yourself to be constrained by the folks who would just love to constrain you, who know less than you, who are making business decisions, then you will not necessarily be very happy. And so remember, you've got the power, and choose to do things that you love, and I think you would be okay. But the way child psychiatry has changed is that managed care has increasingly co-opted individuals' freedom. And you either go along or you don't. As you can see, I don't, but but I don't know if people can get along with that. But there are people who work very well in organizations and probably make much more money than I do. I guess that's an important thing. I feel like I'm just fine. I was raised lower middle class to middle class. Let's just say middle class. I don't need a whole lot. And I see people that are house poor and have to work like dogs forever to pay off huge mortgages and never see their families. And that's a choice too. So I think that the future of child psychiatry also depends on what your own values are, but I think there's a whole lot out there conspiring against you. But it depends on what you want to do. There's so many career options out there in child psychiatry itself, which of course I'm defining as my good buddy John Showalter, who recently passed away, used to talk about the only true general psychiatrists are the child psychiatrists. And that what we call general psychiatrists are actually just adult psychiatrists, which is a specialty. So we are general psychiatrists, and we can move around in that playground as much as we like. And there's so much that's getting in the way of that in every field. It's not just us.